Hi, this is the last video for COM540. It's for Assessment 3, Challenges for Professional Communicators. So, as I said, this is the last one and it's due on the 11th of October and it's worth 30%. So in this assessment, you are to write a 3,000-word paper on the challenges that are facing professional communicators today in our age of globalization and technical disruption. So these have been studied by you, and we all know this is what's happening, and as professional communication professionals or any professionals, it's very important that we actually identify the challenges so that we can actually identify the opportunities for doing things in different ways. So select one of the topics in this subject. So that'll either be organisational culture, organisational change, or stakeholder engagement. Now, organisational culture was your first assessment, stakeholder engagement your second. Organisational change is what you've been doing most recently in the last module. So that might be really something exciting for you as well. Reflect on your learnings from the subject for one of those areas, and what are the challenges that you consider would either enhance, change, or inhibit effective professional communication. So in the context of culture or change or stakeholder engagement, and they do weave into each other as well, what are the challenges that you're facing? So Shriver, there's a paper that you can read, writes, the cognitive and relational networks that professional communicators build are directed towards purposes such as educating, persuading, clarifying, sharing, or collaborating. So do any of these elements contribute to your understanding of what are the purposes of professional communication? So those three areas that you're responsible for. Well, yes, educating, persuading, clarifying, 5 areas, sharing and collaborating. And then there's Brumans, Curran, Robichaud and Taylor, and they state organisations are communicatively constituted. So this is where we come into the CCO. It's called CCO, communicatively constituted organisations. Therefore, we need to understand what we mean by communication, especially in our professional roles. You'll need to source an appropriate theory on which to base your reflection and justify its selection, okay? And contributions from the Montreal School and Week, whilst they appear to be older sources of information, they are still really important seminal areas, seminal works for you to look at and to read. They'll provide some background to your theory research in this area. So there's these two references that you've been given, Brumans, et al. And Shriver. So please read these first because they'll frame what you're going to look at. And then there's Hickey as well, Challenges of Communicators in the digital age versus those of decades past. And there are other references as well, and I apologise I haven't put the other bracket around the 2017, but this is a particularly good reference with regards to that. So the assessments mapping to the learning outcomes of demonstrating advanced knowledge of the role of communication in organisational culture and organisational change. And by now, when you're getting towards the end of this subject, it's really important that you have a very deep understanding of communication in relation to enhancing and changing and improving culture, and which is really integral to organisational change and what's your role in facilitating change. And communication underpins all of this. Demonstrate cognitive skills to critically evaluate theories and contemporary communication practice concerning organisational culture. So that's bridging that gap between theory and practice, but in a critically analytical way. So looking much more deeply at things, not just looking at things descriptively. And demonstrate an ability to identify and critically evaluate stakeholder theory and practice and external pressures on organisations, and develop strategies intended to support and affect organisational change. Now, stakeholder theory is very important throughout this, across the board when it comes to organisational communication, because you have your internal stakeholders and your external, and it's really important that you actually understand how that plays out. Always look to the marking criteria, as I always say. I cannot stress this enough. Your clarity of analysis of the challenges facing contemporary professional communicators, definition of terms, intent, summary and recommendations. So again, we look at the high-level critical analysis, sustained logical and consistent reasoning all the way down. Okay, so really you have to really have a high level of comprehensive knowledge and really critically engage using a number of different readings, literature, and underpinned by theory to actually get a distinction or a high distinction. Okay? Demonstrated understanding and critical evaluation of either culture change or stakeholder engagement. So I really want you to see that you've really grasped these concepts at a much more depth level, not just at the level that is given to you in the subject and in the subject readings, that you've actually looked a bit underneath and compared and contrast things and really found the actual part of either any of these theories, any of these practices that really relate to your practice, and you can synthesize and paraphrase and actually find arguments to support your practice. And obviously demonstrating the understanding of the role of communication specialists or professionals in an age of globalization. Now, very much this is at the heart of this assessment. So the other things are really important as well, but this is at the heart of it, the crux. It's worth 40%. So really having that deeper understanding of where you sit in this and how within the age of pretty rapid disruption, it's a disruptive age, so change isn't the way it used to always be. It's not just incremental or adaptive change. We really have to be looking at disruptive change as well. What is your role as a communicator in that? And then again, we look at your presentation, how you review the literature, whether you've used a number of academic sources, consistent referencing and accurate referencing to get a distinction or above, good writing that flows really well with topic sentences for paragraphs, grammar is correct. All of those things are really integral to and essential for you as a communication professional. So presentation, please present the paper in the following format: an executive summary, as we said before, and a table of contents, introduction, the main body with section heading. So I'll leave that up to you to put that in, but follow the tasks and make it flow in a way that I can follow that when I'm marking as well. And then a conclusion. And in that conclusion, I'd like you to be fairly reflective about that too. Now, given that this is a paper about communication professionals, and that's what you are or you're espousing to be, I would really prefer it if you wrote this paper in the first person, okay? And then the reference list in APA style. So what are the key elements of this assessment? What area of the literature research is your focus? What's most relevant to your practice? So these are some questions that you can use to frame what you're going to investigate. Organisational culture, organisational change, or stakeholder engagement. What does it mean to be in an age of globalisation and technical disruption? So how has this changed the landscape of professional communication practice? What are the challenges that you consider would either enhance, change or inhibit effective professional communication? What are the key processes and roles of professional communication? What communication theory or theories underpin your reflection and analysis? So make sure you really find ones that really underpin that. Note, you will be reviewing the literature on one of the specific topic areas and will reflecting on writing about the challenges that face this area of professional corporate communication. It is an expectation that you will research more widely than the subject readings and references supplied for this assessment. Okay? So just rehashing those 3 references isn't going to cut it. Just rehashing the readings that you've had in the modules, you'll get a credit or a pass. However, you really need to look more widely if you want to actually obtain a distinction or a high distinction. So any questions about this, as I always say, post to the assessment forum first. You can also email me with the details and I can repurpose those to the assessment forum, or you can call me on Mondays between 10 and 12 or Thursdays between 3 and 5. And the Turnitin key, enrolment key and ID is there. I do check your work for plagiarism. I don't mark in Turnitin. It's really good for you to get in the practice, as I've said before, of checking your work, because as communication professionals it's really important that you paraphrase and synthesize and to build your arguments with the literature, but don't use whole bits of text. So if you come back to me with an assessment where your assessment is very, very reliant on a whole number of texts, so you might write a couple of sentences and then you have some quotes, and then you write some more and then you have another quote. If it's just quote and dense heavy, that is not good writing. Some quotes, yes, great to do that, to actually support your arguments. But just using quotes for your arguments doesn't cut it, okay? I just thought I'd say that. I think that's really important that you learn that practice. So I wish you well. Looking forward to marking the final assessment and finding out exactly what parts of the subject really resonated with you and with your practice. So when I find this button to turn off the recording, I'll turn it off. Cheers.